Alright, so today I will be introducing my research in Microsoft Azure. And because the past few years during the pandemic, many companies they face maybe lockdowns or quarantines, so they accelerate the pace of moving their business or moving their daily operations to the cloud. And this trend has benefited many cloud service companies, and they are sought after by investors. And among them is the Microsoft Azure. And we can define three types of we can cloud service. They are defined into three main categories. There are infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So I'll be introducing them one by one. In the basic one is infrastructure as a service, and before, when you have a company, you need the CPU, need GPUs, and you need servers, and you need rooms for installing the service, and you even need some IT experts to maintain it running properly. However, this has a huge disadvantage because your business is not that constant, and in the low seasons, these resources are left kind of wasted. And if your business is growing, your these resources may not be capable of dealing with your increasing needs. So the infrastructure as a service is aimed to provide service for this kind of situation. Like infrastructure as a service, they provide what I basically said before, the servers, the data centers, and you can access them by the internet. And all you have to do is to subscribe to their plans. So, for example, during the pandemic, we have some pharmaceutical companies. They have to develop some vaccines, and this requires a huge amount of computing powers. So, like Moderna or AZ, they use infrastructure as a service to cater this increasing computing needs. And the second one is platform as a service. Uh, this is kind of more a progress one to infrastructure as a service. So PaaS is basically it also provides you some coding projects or coding ones. It's like for the developers, you'd have to coding, right, to develop some applications. However, there are some basic codings that is kind of exhausting. It's like you're building a house, but you don't need to find the bricks or the concrete by yourself. Instead, a platform as a service, they provide you these basic materials, and you can just develop whatever you want using this basic codings project. And the third one is software as a service, and this one is maybe what we are both most familiar to. Uh, the common example is like the Word and the Google Docs. Uh, the Word, when Microsoft sell you this application, you install it in your own computer, and then Microsoft has already nothing to do with this application. And the other is like SaaS. SaaS one is like Google Docs. We access it to the through the internet, and the Google just maintain it through the internet and keep progressing it, and keep and launching some new service to it. And these are the like a basic the key differences between SaaS, software as a service, and what the traditional business model is like. And the SaaS model often comes with subscription because it's a proven to be an efficient way to increase the revenue. And for example, like SaaS service, we have already used them in our daily lives, like Netflix or Spotify. We just pay a amount of dollars, maybe every month, and we can receive the abundant service from it. Okay, so in this graph, we can see the kind of difference between the three three cloud service. In the bottom is infrastructure as a service. It provides the most basic part of the cloud service, and the second part is PaaS, the platform as a service. It also provides software package, and the top one is software as a service. It provides the application to the users, so the users have the control. The SaaS they have less control because you just simply use the application, and the infrastructure as a service you use the computing powers to do whatever you need. So you have more control over it. All right, so the Azure it falls into categories of uh, infrastructure as a service because it provides the data centers to its clients. So now we move to Azure's main competitors worldwide. We'll start from the Chinese market. In fact, Azure has been trying to enter Chinese market, but it hasn't been a success. The leader in Chinese cloud market is Alibaba, and it's due to basically two main reasons. The first is the Chinese government regulations, because China government doesn't allow you to directly operate your data centers within their countries. Instead, you have to cooperate with the local registered companies, and so your operation is like separated. And this has caused an like disadvantage for Microsoft Azure because you can directly access to your data. And the second reason is because of the Great Firewall, and because we need data from the foreign countries, they have to go through this firewall, and this inevitably like slow things down. So these are two main reasons why foreign cloud providers failed in Chinese market. All right, so we move to AWS. AWS is the leading character in cloud service worldwide. It has almost 33% of market share, and AWS is like a pioneer in this field. And yes, and it's like because in AWS it mainly focus on the startups. For instance, like Netflix and Airbnb, they are all his clients. It's like they grew it from its like early phase, and that is the advantage of Amazon AWS. And the third one is Google Cloud Platforms. Google Cloud Platforms, because Google they are working in some cool projects like Google Cars and Google Glasses, so it can expand its clients from these projects and expand its business network from its providers, from its suppliers. All right, so we can see the market share here. It's basically an oligopoly market. So for Asia, it may face an antitrust issues. In fact, it has already happened in Europe. Like past in summer of 2021, a French cloud company has filed an antitrust complaint in Europe against Microsoft because Microsoft has been using a strategy called like bundling. We know Microsoft has an Office application we are using every day, like Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. It has sell Azure and these application as a bundle. So if you use Azure service, you may acquire a discount using the other applications. and this had caused a complaint. So eventually, Microsoft had choose to make make concessions to avoid EU antitrust probe, and this may happen again in the future. However, however, like Microsoft Azure is still a competitive product, and the bundling of the Office application is more like a cherry on the cake. So, in my opinion, we don't have to worry about it in its future development because Azure is still a competitive product, and if you rely on the existing business network, and Azure will still acquire its own stake of the market. So this is a conclusion. Thank you.
Right. So thank you very much. Okay, I think so. Here, Neil also brought us our attention, right, to again another really, you may say, another really trendy issue in basically IT services. So I think after his presentation, I think you'll have some more glimpse into this field. So now I'd like to invite any questions or comments. So I think we can, okay, once again, we can maybe start with my question. Right, I think so. I think Neil, you just compared the three, right, the three main competitors of Microsoft Azure. Would you also like maybe further, would you also further specify their target users? I think because, for example, I think the target users of AWS and Microsoft Azure are very different.
Indeed, as I mentioned before, like the AWS is more focused on the startups, and also they have some like big companies clients as well. So to some extent, my AWS has a more has focused more on the potential clients because as like Netflix, like Airbnb, they grew from the startup into an unicorn company, and this has generated it has bring many profit to AWS, and this is the advantage of AWS. And while Azure is more rely on the existing business network because like all companies they use Office applications. So this also brings like an advantage to Azure. Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, and we know also Azure, right? Is like the new service Microsoft provides. And also, we know AWS has become a major source of revenue for Amazon here. So, in terms of revenue proportions, would you also like to tell us how important is AWS to Amazon and how important is Azure to Microsoft?
I think the importance of these cloud platforms to the both companies are quite they are like super important. They are the like second flywheel to these two companies because we know Microsoft it has its new CEO has recently inaugurated, and the CEO is named Shayan Nadella. He's like a man of precision, and he has established the policy of they have Microsoft have to transit itself from a software company to a cloud company. So we can see Microsoft making progress in like they launched new service called Office 335. It's basically a subscription plan of its existing Office applications, and also we see it launch Azure to acquire the cloud market, and because the cloud market is like growing, we see a growing demand in this field, including like the metaverse. We need a lot of computing resources in it. For example, if an object in metaverse falls and it bounces back, we need to calculate it calculate its movement, and this all requires a large amount of computing resources. So the demand it will bound to be rising in the future. So the AWS and Azure, we see like no crisis in the horizon except of the antitrust one.
Right. So thank you for the explanation. All right. Very good. So do you have any other question or comments? So to speak, you just need to turn on the mic. Okay. Oh, maybe not for the moment. Yeah, I think again maybe so maybe Neil. So maybe you can just try to take into account what I just asked you. Maybe you can also try to classify all these services in terms of their target users, also in terms of their importance, right, for the revenue income of the company. I think maybe another thing to consider will be, I think again, so you mentioned subscription service, right? I think sometimes people tend to confuse, right? People tend to confuse between subscription service and SaaS. Maybe there's a need for you to distinguish between the two as you discuss SaaS. All right. Okay. Yeah. I think the BR has great potential. I think you're already on the good track. So again, congratulations on the good job. So let's give Neil a big hand. All right. Thank you very much. All right. And so now we're ready.